Hello, I am William Jamar Wright,
And I'm Hattie.
and this is our podcast, HattieJo, What Are We Doing? And how are you doing, Hattie?
I am doing great, actually.
Doing great? Oh, nice.
Because it is the Olympic trials for gymnastics.
Nice.
I've been watching so much gymnastics already this weekend. More gymnastics I've watched in the past, whole year, all combined. I've got more coming up tomorrow.
That's right.
Great. We've got to record. We have the capability to record. Oh my goodness.
Which we've always had.
I just don't know how to use these things. This is novel to me, okay, guys? I'm not a big TV watcher or things on TV watcher, so I am newly becoming acquainted with the ability to record things, and it is blowing my mind. So yes, welcome Hattie to the 21st century, but it is great. It is good to be here.
Watching the GOAT.
Yes, these Simone Biles and so many other fantastic gymnasts. I don't want to take away from Simone because it's Olympic champions are here and then Simone is here.
Mm-hmm.
She is that good and deserves all the hype. Yet at the same time, I do want to recognize it's not we only have one gymnast in the U.S. that's good. All the other women competing at Olympic trials are also just top quality. So
Nice.
it's really great. Yeah.
Well, speaking of...
men are good too.
Yeah,
I want to be fair here, but...
Well, it's funny that you the men are good too, because obviously not as much money is put into men's gymnastics as is put into female gymnastics, and that kind of shows in the coverage and the opportunities at a college level.
Oh, huge at the college level, yeah. And the men have historically, up until the past two Olympics, been equally as successful as the women.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they won the gold medal in 1984 Olympics. So before the women ever won a team gold medal, the men had won a team gold medal.
Huh.
So, yeah, recently women's gymnastics has really, really elevated. And the men have also had, I don't necessarily know that we've had an all-around gold medalist.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like one of the twins, the Ham brothers, may have got silver or something. But there have been plenty of medal winners on individual events and in individual all-around, just as there had been for the women. Do you know what I mean? So I would say barring the past 15, 20 years, it doesn't make any sense because they're equally as successful, right? Some people could argue, well, such and such team doesn't win anything, that's why nobody likes them. And I would say that is not a valid argument.
Okay.
So anyway, we're kind of getting off track for our...
Well, it kind of got...
but kind of not, because...
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes to
Amelia, over here, please.
Self-care. Because we're this episode is going to be about self-care and kind of how we regulate that with ourselves. Because it is important. We've all been kind of pandemic mode and just kind of keeping our heads above water.
Yes. And not even in a huge crisis pandemic situation, just in general life. I think that it's really important as well.
Yeah.
But in case you didn't know or didn't know me, gymnastics is one way that I, practice self-care, whether it's personally being involved as a coach. I really love to coach. Yes, that was a job, but it didn't feel like work, right? It was something I just loved to do, participating in it myself, whether as a kid or as an adult, just going into open gym or an adult class and just, moving my body.
Or trampoline park.
Yeah, or it's trampoline park, or now sitting on the couch watching TV. There's many levels here, but they all, for me, fall under that umbrella of self-care in a situation where it's just something that gives me joy, right? So even as a child, I could have awful days or be all stressed about all sorts of things. I'd walk into the gymnastics gym, and you know how there's that term of leave your problems at the door, or check your attitude at the door or whatever?
Yeah.
Well, it was not something I even had to try to do. It was just once I was in the gym, all of my problems were away.
Oh,
Do you
really?
know what I mean? Like, it just was like a good, joyful place that I love to be. And even as a coach, right? Like, I could be so stressed and be like, oh my God, I really have way too much to do. I don't have time to go, like, drive half hour, coach 3 hours, drive another half hour home. Like, this is not great. This is not ideal. And as soon as I get there, I forget all about that. I have just a great 3 hours. Like, the half hour ride home, I'm like, so glad I did that. You know, like, this is great. I have a whole new outlook. None of my other problems have changed in any way, but I suddenly feel so much better about them. So, and I truly think that, like, to me, that's the definition of self-care, is that it's something that doesn't change any of your problems, but you feel so much better when you're done with it, right? Like, maybe it changes your attitude.
Yeah,
not even your attitude about it. Like, it might change your perspective or your attitude, but, like, I wouldn't say that coming out of the gym, I'm like thinking about my problems and logicking myself into here's why it's not a problem. It's just totally separate from any of my problems, something that gives me joy. And so now I'm in a better headspace to approach my problems. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think, to me, that's, like I just said, anything that has that effect, to me, is a self-care thing. And I recognize
and
that
it's the
that
effect
could be many,
of like
many different
changing
things for
your
different
perspective, or just like, so what is the effect? Is it the effect of just like changing your perspective on something, or is it, what would you say that like self-care does for you?
I would say for me, what self-care does is, like, the self-care itself does not change my perspective on the problems. The self-care puts me in a headspace that can approach my problems better.
Okay.
So and for me, that headspace is just one of joy, enjoying my life, enjoying interacting with people, enjoying moving
Choosing
my body.
joy.
Yeah, choosing joy, enjoy choosing you. So that's for me. So what would you say what would be your definition of self-care?
Well, I would just say like it's anything that like self-care is kind of along the same lines, like it brings you joy. I was kind of thinking of like the money aspect of it. Like, do you typically spend money to like on self-care items? But there definitely can be situations where people are spending money. But like I typically think of like, for me, oftentimes like self-care isn't necessarily like spending money. It's much more of like activities that I'm doing that I enjoy, that don't necessarily like, they take time for me to do, but it's not necessarily like a money like spending.
Right. And so I think that's a good point, and for me, I just wanted to clarify, I don't think self-care things are things that bring you joy. It just so happens for me that the thing that's a self-care thing to me happens to bring me joy, right? Like, I think a lot of people would say a way I practice self-care is going to get a massage, or paying for a babysitter and not going to do anything, just hanging out at my house. Like, I have been the babysitter that the mom is like, I'm going to be here the whole time. I just need to not be dealing with my kids. No, I'm not going to be over there vacuuming. No, I'm not going to be over here paying bills. No, I'm not going to be doing anything productive. I just need some me time, right? So, like, that, to your point, like, some people pay plenty of money for that, right? Give me a massage, give me a pedicure, like, give me a spa day, give me time away from my kids, right? But other times, you know, like for me, yes, I'll pay $300 to go see Simone Biles on this goat tour thing after the Olympics, or it's completely free. I walk outside when I was in Sweden on my thingamabob, and I just am doing like tumbling in the grass because it's a beautiful day and I love to tumble, you know, like totally free. Like, so it runs the whole gamut. But I think that is a good point, because I think there's a whole industry kind of on self-care that's emerging. It's trying to get you to spend money.
Yes, that
and
is
so
very true.
Recognizing, hey, this is worth it. I would, take my money for these things because I get the desired effect. Excellent. But if it's not something that's giving you that desired effect, like that's what you should be looking for, whether it costs money or not.
That joy aspect.
Well, also, you keep saying that joy aspect. I'm not trying to, like, I want to be clear that to me, self-care is not something that brings you joy.
Oh, really?
My definition of self-care is something that puts me in a mental perspective so that I can approach the problems that I have more effectively. It just so happens that one of those main self-care things I participate in also brings me joy. Because to me, like, self-care, I also love to organize, and I know that sounds ridiculous, and I wouldn't say that organizing brings me joy in the same way that gymnastics does, but it does make me feel, it's hard to put into words how it makes me feel, but it certainly makes me feel like I can approach my problems better, even if it hasn't changed anything about my problems, right? So
well, that's an interesting idea too, that like self-care doesn't like change anything about like what you're facing, or it doesn't change any situations. Like, you're just taking care of yourself, and like that can put you in a like better like headspace, or give you time to like think about it and process it differently. And like I think about a lot about like, because I like to play basketball, and I have not been able to do that anywhere near as much as like I used
pre-pandemic,
to. Pre-pandemic.
And when we lived in Durham.
Yeah, and so like I definitely never playing basketball never changed anything about like my situations or anything, but it was something that I did that like involved exercise, like
moving your body.
Yeah, moving my body, and like it also just like you were talking about with gymnastics, it oftentimes, if I was angry or like upset about something, like I could go and play, and then like that would put me in a different like headspace.
Even though whatever was making you angry is still there, or like is still happening, or.
And so that I feel like that's an important part, that like self-care is not going to change anyone's situation, but it can allow like time and like add perspective.
Right, or just change your mental chemistry.
Yeah.
To be in a more adaptable place, or a more resourceful place, or a more creative place, depending on whatever the situation is that you're facing. So what are some other ways besides basketball that you enjoy, that you would classify as things you do for self-care?
So I think that like definitely like basketball, but exercise as well. Like I definitely think that's like a huge self-care for me. Just
it's a big one for me too.
Health-wise, we've talked. My friends and I, who also play college football, we've talked about like how college football is probably going to take some years off our life at the end. But it also like instilled in me is just like I want to like be working out and like getting up a good sweat.
Well, because you've experienced time and time again all the benefits of exercise that are not physical, right? Like, you've experienced the endorphins that come after you've worked out. You've experienced it clears your mind, your anxiety is less, like all those types of things, because you've been forced to work out a bazillion times, right? So like now, at least for me personally, I feel very similar in that I've done competitive sports enough chunk of my life that I'm very intimately familiar with. Like, I feel lots less anxious if I get some good exercise in, right? Or I perform better. Like, this was my magic sauce for exams in college. Like, the day before, I would be sure to just get a good workout in. Like, I'd study all this stuff, but it's like the night before, I will clear 2 hours of my schedule to get a good, solid workout in.
Oh, really?
And that was like, yes. That and then chewing gum during the exam was like my 2 keys to success. Like, and the gum is not a self-care thing, but anyway, and I noticed that it was that same trade-off of like, oh my gosh, I feel like I should be spending this time studying or sleeping or whatever. But I found that for me personally, it was such a good investment of time for all these other reasons that it was worthwhile. So anyway, I mean, my sister-in-law Sarah and I have talked about that a lot too, of just like, we're not really running for like, I mean, physical health is a nice benefit, but like the mental health benefits are like the true draw here. And it's more of a like self-care activity, even if it's like 8 minutes, like that's all I got 8 minutes.
But these 8 minutes, I'm gonna give it all.
Yes, and that is worth it. Do you know what I mean? Like, even though it's only 8 minutes, I might have preferred all this other stuff. But an 8-minute workout is still like enough, even if like it's still going to be useful to do. So. Well,
yeah, I think of like other ways that like I practice self-care. And I definitely think that like for me, like video games is like kind of a stronghold for me. And I think it also
just kinda, yeah.
But I think it just goes back to like when I was a kid, and like my brothers and I, like we didn't have like my siblings and I, we just didn't have a lot in common, and so like I could go and play video games even though like they may be outside playing or something, and like we weren't interested in the same thing. So video games was something that like we could both be interested in. It was a way for me to bond with like my older like cousins and stuff like that. And so, but it also like if ever I was like stressed or anything, like I could go and play video games and kind of take my mind off of it. It was something else that I could focus on that kind of like needed my attention.
Sure.
And I think now, like, definitely when I have like long days or something, like I can come home and play video games and kind of just shuts my mind off for everything else, and I can just focus on that.
Right. And I think that's another important aspect of self-care is I feel like you and I, we enjoy an occasional massage, stuff like that, but that's not our main avenue of self-care. But I think there's a distinction too. A lot of the things we're describing that are self-care for ourselves could also be, and probably are for both of us, a hobby, and they're hobbies for other people. But like in my mind, some people can get too competitive with that, and it's like, I'm not doing my self-care because I'm trying to get like 1% better every day, or like, I want my mild pace to get better. Like that's great when it happens, but I'm doing this purely for the joy, like the benefits of doing it. I'm not doing it to achieve like this success or like end goal or like improvement, right? And I feel like that can be. I was recently listening to a podcast where the person speaking was talking about there's like a huge group of people that like to do video games that are like not to win the video game. So I'm very unfamiliar with lots of video games, but it's more of the ones where like you're a little person and you have like a land that you're exploring, and in the main theme of the game is to like go along and like do challenges and find things and blah blah blah, and like you navigate through the game and eventually get to the end. But there's like this huge group of people, and they're starting to change the way games are designed, those types of games, that they're like, I don't want to defeat the big boss here. Like I'm not trying to like get on to the next challenge and on to the next level. I just want to like explore around and like have a nice time. Like I'm doing
well,
this
that's funny,
not because I'm like trying to get there, So it's again that concept of like it's the journey, not the destination. Like da da da.
And I think that like that definitely reflects a lot of the video games like my like nephews are interested in, and that like you watch them play, and it's like, what are you guys? What's the goal here? And they're just like. Just to kind of explore, go around. Like,
what do you mean goal?
Yeah,
like I'm just playing the video game.
You can do some bad stuff and like maybe steal or beat some people up, but like it has no bearing on like a ranking or anything. You're just kind of being you in like this
yeah,
different world,
right?
video game world. But yeah, it's interesting that like that's kind of becoming where like that's an area in which like video games are growing in, and that like you're allowed to be more creative, and kind of in changing your thought process about like not trying to like be the big boss, but like how can you like be creative in this space, in this area.
Well, and I think I guess what I'm trying to say is another tie-in that I was thinking in my mind I didn't discuss is I was talking to somebody at work who's really into running. And I was mentioning that I enjoy running too, right? And then he's like asking me about races I've run and all this stuff. And I've done some half marathons, so it's not like I'm like a scrub, but I'm not competitive in running. Like, I'm not fast. I can't do a full marathon. Like, I'm not training for anything, you know, like, well, that's the type of runner he is, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so he's like, and he's telling me how he's got these kids now and it's hard for him to find the time, and he's like really unmotivated if his times aren't getting better or if he's not like basically training for a thing and improving his performance. And so I had this whole discussion with him about like that's not even my, it's like so far beyond, like so far away from my purpose in my running these days that it's just like foreign to me, you know. And he's just like, oh my god, like I can't wrap my mind around like you're just doing this,
running
like,
you're not
caring about getting better, like, you know. And I'm like, yeah, I specifically won't buy one of those fancy smartwatches because I don't want to be reminded all the time like that was 10 seconds miles slower than the last time, or like it's been a week and you haven't done your workout. Like, I'm just doing this to enjoy. I don't need to be keeping tabs and tracks and metrics and, you know, like, no, you know. So I think that, you know, depending on the type of self-care, I think it can be like a trap. Because I definitely know when I first started running, I did care about those things, right? And I was interested in my improvement. And I still have a tracker on my phone that tracks these things, and I like to see, but I'm not nearly so invested in it, and to the point where like my app on my phone is not telling me like you've missed some workouts or like it's been X time. It just so it's very self-motivated. If I want to find the information, I'll get it. I don't need a device that's like advertising the information to me when I haven't requested it. So yeah, but I think I mean obviously if your self-care is like taking a nap or cooking a nice meal, you don't fall into those types of traps, I would imagine. I'm not really a chef.
Yeah,
so
I wonder though, like,
I don't know.
Yeah, even like, because I definitely, like, I think cooking for me is a form of self-care. Although, like,
you like it.
I do like to cook, but I don't know if I would do it as much if, like, I feel like ever since we started dating, that, like, I cook more than I used to.
Well, yeah.
But I do enjoy cooking, but like, yeah, I think that's
and I think I'm starting to enjoy cooking more, but I still think you and I, on some level, view cooking as a chore, right? Like if we had, like, part of the reason we like to eat out is like, oh, we don't have to cook. At least for me, you know. So even though, like, I enjoy cleaning. Cleaning makes me feel good to have a nice clean house, but it's still a chore.
Yes.
Right? And that sometimes I'm not looking forward to cleaning. I always love the result. Same with cooking. Not looking forward to cooking. Always like eating, right? But the act of cleaning and the act of cooking, they can give me joy at times. They can give me positive reinforcement, but it's still not that same. Like, I wouldn't put it on the self-care level.
Okay.
Just because it doesn't give me that mindful perspective of now I can approach my problems in a different way, even though it does often make me feel a little better about things. But it still just feels like a chore.
Yeah, and I would say like it's down. It's way below things that I would classify as self-care. But I do think that like there are times where like cooking for me is a form of self-care. It's not always, but
I feel like
there are
oftentimes on the Sunday nights when you cook a creative meal, like when you're getting creative with it and exploring something new, it seems to be bordering on the self-care from what I observe, but who knows what I know. So yeah, another way that I practice self-care, which I have not been able to do very much anymore, but one day, might be in retirement, but one day I'll be able to read a whole lot more. Like when I was a kid, I could spend like from Saturday, from the moment I woke up till the moment I went to bed, just reading all day, right? Like I just love to read, and when you find a good story, it's just great. So anyway.
Well, I definitely feel like since the pandemic has hit, like I've definitely been reading a lot more. But like I could never read from sunup to sundown.
Oh, well, and to me it definitely depends on what I'm reading. So it would have to be a really good fiction novel. I can't read like biographies or, you know, my mom got me this really awesome book for Christmas that's like scientific, and it's about psychology and how the mind works and things like that. And I can't read that all day, right? If it's taking a lot of my attention and focus, like if it's too mentally taxing to read, that's not a self-care thing, even if I'm enjoying it and interested, right? And obviously I don't want to be reading like books that are so not engrossing that I'm not really paying attention. You know, I don't know if I'm articulating this quite well, but
no, you do make a good point though, because like I definitely read like more biographies and kind of like historical like text, and like after reading those I'm definitely like zapped a little bit and like drained, and it's like I don't think self-care is supposed to
drain you. Yeah, exactly.
So I've definitely started to read more, but I definitely wouldn't say that like reading is like a form of self-care for me. And I can't really like, I'm trying to think of like what else I kind of do for like self-care, and I really think it like kind of boils down to like exercising and then video games. Like I can't really think of anything else that like I would kind of classify as self-care.
I think the one other thing, so for me it's definitely anything gymnastics related, also exercise, reading to a lesser extent, because who has the time for all these self-care things? Right?
Yeah, you can really know.
I got all this self-care stuff.
You gotta prioritize.
Yeah, you also gotta work at some point. So anyway, but for me, something that is that I consider self-care because I get that same like mental perspective benefit is when we have like a night out on the town, or you know, and that's not something I could do week in and week out, right? But like once a month or once every couple weeks, like we go to a nice dinner, we go shoot some pool, like we're just hanging out with each other, relaxing. Like it's not like some big vacation that we're trying to get this like great enjoyment out of.
Sure.
It's just, this is not our usual routine.
Doing something different.
Yeah, I mean, even though it might be our same going out routine, but it's not like our day-to-day usual routine. Just enjoying spending some time, not thinking about everything else. I'm not, you know, this is not an item I'm checking off my list. This is not, you know, it's just spending quality time with someone I enjoy spending quality time with. And I think you're really good about being like, we need to do this. Let's do this weekend, or like whatever weekend. I'll be like, and then finally we agree on some time, and then I'm like, thank God we went and did this. This is so great. Like I didn't get any of my things done that I wanted to get done, but I'm still happy I did this. Yeah,
and we definitely like. I like exploring different new places, so that I feel like that's.
Yeah.
I guess that could be a form of. I don't know if I see that as a. I see that as just like us having like a date night and something that I really enjoy doing. But I guess that classifies.
Well, to me, self-care. I can tell it's self-care because. So I don't feel this way. Well, I did. Never mind. I can feel this way about all of my self-care activities apparently, but when I feel like I have other better things to do, and I'm like, ugh, I really shouldn't spend the time doing this, like, ugh. But if I make myself do it, and at the end, I'm like, thank God I did that. Even though that's 2 less hours I have to do all the other things I need to do, or even, you know, to me, that's like the epitome of self-care, of like, all the things that are stressing you out, you made no progress towards, you didn't even want to do this thing, but after you've done it, now you're so glad you did.
Okay. See,
so
good perspective to have on self-care and why it is so important.
It is so important. So listen to your fiancés when they're like, we need to go do something.
True. Get out.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, we hope that you find lots of good ways to practice self-care. I know things can be really busy. Even 5 minutes, 8 minutes of a workout, you know, 5 minutes of just peaceful breathing, like listening to music, whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
Hopefully
take care of yourself, guys. All right, and that is what we're doing. Deuces.